Good morning. Today is March 2nd, 2026. I'm going to call the Municipal Services and Properties Committee to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call a roll? Here. Madam Clerk, can you please excuse the absence of Councilman Harsh? And Councilman Casey will be a little bit late today, okay? All right, we're going to start off we have one piece of legislation on the agenda, and after that, we're going to hear from MOCAP with the CIP plan for 2026. All right, so let's kick it off with ordinance number 34, 2026 by Council Members Bishop, Slife, and Griffin. This is a departmental request. This is an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into a lease and a right of entry agreement granting the National Rail Passenger Corporation, also known as Amtrak, or its designee, the right to use and occupy the city-owned property located adjacent to the Cleveland Memorial Shoreway to operate its rail passenger station for a period of 2 years, continuing month to month thereafter, and to make the public improvement of installing and maintaining Americans with Disabilities Act or ADA compliant improvements at the site. All right, Director.
Mr. Chairman, so before I hand it over to Commissioner DeGennaro, just a few words. One is that these planned improvements have been on the table for a little while with Amtrak. And at the time, they decided to focus on other stations because they knew that the city was working on a multimodal center for the lakefront, as well as, and that goes back to the Jackson administration, as well as currently we're working on the land bridge and the North Coast Connector. But the time has come where they need to move forward with these ADA improvements to the lakefront station. So what you see before is legislation that would allow them to do that for the benefit of all the passengers. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner DeGennaro for the details.
Thank you, Director. So beginning this spring of 2026, Amtrak will undertake improvements to its passenger rail station located on city property at 200 Memorial Shoreway. The improvements are intended to bring the station into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. This legislation would authorize the Director of Capital Projects to issue a license for a term not to exceed 2 years to Amtrak for the duration of the construction. The improvements include raising the existing platform and improvements to existing track crossings, expansion of the canopy over the station and the platform partially located on city property. Amtrak will also need space for parking and lay down for its contractors and access across city property. And this construction is anticipated to be completed within 24 months. Day-to-day operations at the station will not be disturbed, and any physical issues with the property will be required to be resolved at the end of construction via the license agreement.
All right, okay, thank you for that, Commissioner. So can you give us a little historical context on the terms of the last agreement that we had with Amtrak? Because I don't recall any legislation coming through the municipal services about Amtrak.
Yes, happy to, Mr. Chairman. So probably the reason you don't remember is because it was so long ago. There was a lease that was signed in 1975, and it was for a 5-year term with 3 5-year renewal options. So the last renewal option would have expired in 1995. So the lease is just pretty old.
So we haven't had them under contract since 95?
I mean, I guess technically you could say they're existing on a month-to-month lease, but because it's really such an old lease, we felt that issuing a license was a wise thing to do at this point for the construction.
Okay, so now the lease is for $1, right?
That's right.
And that's for the whole term of the lease, or is that $1 per annually?
Let's see, I brought a copy with me. I'll have to check, Mr. Chairman, through the lease. I'm not sure if it's annually or if they were just required to pay $1 up front. They built the improvements, so I guess that was part of the consideration for the lease. It looks like the improvements at that time were valued at $600,000. But I'm not sure if there was an annual rent or if it was just $1 up front.
Okay, so the improvement is just to make everything ADA handicap accessible, correct?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
So now they have a building down there too. Who owns who owns that structure on the property?
So the station is located on city property.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a city building?
Yes, technically under the lease, when the lease expires, the station would become the property of the city.
Okay, so do we have stipulations in this piece of legislation about the maintenance and the upkeep of the building? Or is that just implied?
I'm sorry, in the license agreement or in the lease?
Do we have anything in writing about the upkeep
Maintenance.
of the building?
Yes, I'm sure there is a clause in the lease about that. I'd have to comb through the lease and kind of find I don't want to answer incorrectly, so let me take a look through the lease and I'll get you answers to those questions.
Okay. All right, I'm going to open it up for questions from the committee. Is there any questions, Councilman Shaw?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to the director, I'm just curious. You stated, with the planned construction for the road, the bridge, and what we're anticipating doing, is that going to require Amtrak to redo any of this work later on after we're done with the land bridge work?
Through the chairman of the councilman, so it is possible because what we're hoping to do, and we received a federal grant to study this, is combine RTA and Amtrak into one station. So currently they're in separate locations. Their tracks aren't necessarily compatible. And we're seeking to have a multimodal center on the lakefront with just Amtrak and RTA. So we got a federal grant to study it. However, and that's why we were encouraging RTA to hold off on their improvements, but they're at a point where they need to comply with the ADA rules of the federal government. So they wish to move forward, knowing that we're still looking for a compatibility between the two rail lines, passenger rail lines.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Shaw. I'm going to Councilwoman Gray.
Yes, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning.
Where would this right to entry be with Amtrak and RTA? Chair to the director.
Through the chairman and the councilwoman. So it would be kind of directly in front of us on the lakefront here, like right behind City Hall.
Okay.
Where exactly, we don't know, because both rail lines, there's sort of an arc of how you can turn trains properly, and you need to come to a position where both rail lines can sort of come together at the right location. So that's what this federal grant is to study, where exactly it would be. But right here in front of us, whether it's a little bit west, a little bit east, right in the middle, that's what we have to study.
Okay, and chair to the director, even though you don't know exactly where, is that down by the tower or down in the flats?
Oh,
Because you got the right of way could be under, like in the Tower City, and then you got the right of way down by the flats going towards, St. Clair. As you go down the hill, that could be a right of way there.
through the chairman of the councilwoman, it would be literally right in front of City Hall. So it would be near where the current Amtrak station is, which is, if we're looking out of these windows, you can see it right down there.
Okay.
So we're only talking of a matter of, a few, tens of feet in either direction, but it would be right in front of City Hall at the lakefront level where
the
the railroad
lakefront.
tracks are. Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Richard Starr.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, so with this ordinance, this is not to actually do the study, but this is actually to begin the work that's needed for the possible upgrades. to the project through the chair?
Through the chairman, correct. So the grant to study combining RTA and Amtrak is a separately funded initiative that we receive from the federal government. This ordinance before you is allowing Amtrak to spend Amtrak's money to make this station ADA compliant. Two different separate initiatives.
Thank you. And in addition, what specific ADA improvements are proposed at Amtrak station? Or what are we actually doing with the Amtrak dollars through the chair?
Through the chairman to Councilman Starr. So Amtrak is going to raise the existing platform. They're also going to redo the canopy over the station and the platform, part of which is on city property and part of which is on property that they have that's under their control. They also they'll need some space for their contractors to use for access and lay down and parking. And they also are going to improve the existing track crossings, which are not located on city property.
And I know my colleague, Councilman Shaw, was asking about potential upgrades or improvements once this is done. Are there any city costs anticipated for this project in addition to the work that Amtrak is doing through the chair?
Through the chair, no cost to the city.
Okay, and if this project goes on and Amtrak is not or don't complete it, who is the ones that responsible for the maintenance of this project as far as any remediations or anything like that in the near future? How would that work through the chair?
Through the chair to Councilman Starr. So Amtrak, under the license, is required to complete the improvements and to restore any disturbed areas at their cost.
Okay. And how long is this project as far as the duration of completion of this? How long would it take for this to get completed through the chair, the time frame?
Through the chair, the construction is anticipated to take 24 months.
24 months?
Yes.
And within those 24 months, with this being in Councilwoman Stephanie House Jones' ward, is there any way that council will be able to track the progress as well as receive updates? How frequently are that able to be completed through the chair?
Through the chair, yes, we'd be happy to provide updates to the council.
And then as far as all the ADA improvements, have you talked to anyone or the community regarding these improvements or are planning on doing so they can know exactly what's going on and the community input and transparency? Is anything like that is in the works to be completed through the chair?
Through the chair, we have not discussed the improvements with the community. I would have to check with Amtrak to see if there was any community engagement around the proposed improvements. I do know that they're required by consent decree to complete these improvements, so it's a good thing that they're turning their attention to it.
Yes, and within that, from the community standpoint, definitely talking to people with special disabilities or those who need assistance or who need some support. I think people with disabilities should be concerned about their needs for this station. If that's something you can actually do, that would be greatly appreciated, I believe, for the community. And then also making sure we are just in line of what other projects are going on. Like you heard from my council colleague Shaw, who mentioned if we complete this, we're going to look up and redo some different things. Is in alignment with any other projects, whether it's something that RTA is doing or NOAC, or do we have anything to make sure it is all in line just in case any improvement? That would be greatly appreciated as well. And I yield, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman. I'm going to come back to Councilman Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions that I was sitting here, Director, through the chair. I don't have the most newest updates on the land bridge, so maybe you can provide some context. But was there a delay in that project, and is that why Amtrak is now pushing forward? Were they initially anticipating doing this all together, or what changed for them where they want to go forward? Because to me, it sounds like it's going to require some redo shortly after the land bridge is done. and I understand they're probably required under ADA law to have that through, but like, was this not anticipated beforehand? So wanted to just understand some of that going back and forth through the chair.
Through the chairman of the councilman, so I think that the relevant historical context is that under the Jackson administration, they were looking to combine Amtrak, RTA, and Greyhound on the lake. So there was a big push to get funding in place for a feasibility study of combining all three and to having it on the lakefront. And this is well before the land bridge concept came to play, and it was a big initiative for the Jackson administration to try to get that off the ground. And that's when Amtrak agreed to hold off so that we could try to push that idea forward. Nowadays, Greyhound has moved to Brook Park, either Brook Park Station or the city of Brook Park, I'm not sure which. And so it's RTA and Amtrak that we're looking to combine as part of our current lakefront project. But the gap of time between the two concepts was long enough that Amtrak decided that to comply with federal law, they needed to make these improvements. So in good faith, they held off. And Amtrak has been a constant partner as part of the land bridge and lakefront meetings. So that team meets with Amtrak on a regular basis. So they're working on these improvements with full knowledge of what we're planning and when our project is going to kick off. But they got to the point where they just need to make it compliant, and they can't just hold their breath any longer.
Also, through the chair to Councilman Shaw, these ADA improvements are not just occurring at the Cleveland station, but they're required nationally at all Amtrak stations.
No, thank you. That makes sense, and I'm glad to hear that. I was concerned that they weren't moving forward out of frustration. That we were taking too long, or this was being delayed. And obviously, Amtrak is a valuable partner, so it sounds like they're still on the same page, and they understand there might be more costs associated in the future. But I'm presuming, just need to minimize their liability with the ADA not being accessible. That's accurate?
Through the chairman and the councilman, that's accurate, and
Okay.
that's my understanding. And they're still at the table with us.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you. I yield, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman Shaw. I'm going to go to Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the director, are they doing this because they're under a consent decree now? Is that the whole reason they're doing it?
My understanding is that, yes, they are being required to make these improvements, not just at the Cleveland station, but like I said, throughout the country.
Right. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, 2-year project, month-to-month lease after that for our property, correct?
Excuse me, Councilman, could you repeat the question?
Is it, if I'm reading this correct, it's a month-to-month lease that we're giving them?
So through the chairman of the councilman, so we need to determine where that future combined station could be before we would want to give them a longer-term lease.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, to the director, but how much is that lease every month?
Through the chairman of the councilman, this current lease is expired, and they're on a month-to-month, and it was always at $1. So they built the improvements, but there's no cost to provide that transit service to our residents.
No, I understand that, but Mr. Chairman, to the director, so we're leasing our property to Amtrak for $1 a month?
I'm not sure if it's $1. It's a nominal lease.
Well, and here, in your executive summary, it says $1.
Okay. Then
Yeah, before you got here, Councilman, I
I'm
asked,
sorry.
was it
I know,
$1 a
I
month
was
or
about
$1
10 minutes late, I
Yeah,
apologize.
I know. It was $1. They don't know if it's $1 a year or $1 a month.
If I
Okay.
could clarify, Mr. Chairman, it's the license agreement, the cost of the license agreement will be $1.
Flat.
Yes. The lease rate, I have to look through the lease. It doesn't really specify whether it's $1 a year, $1 a month, but it was a nominal cost lease in consideration of the fact that Amtrak is providing passenger rail service to the residents.
No, I understand. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So So before finance, please let us get some clarity as far as it $1 a month or $1 a year. It doesn't make a lot of difference, but we just really want you to be complete when you come to the table. You know, we got questions. We really would like the questions answered properly. Is there any other questions on ordinance number 36, 2026? No, 34, 2026. All right, Councilman Shaw.
Sorry, just one final question. I'm presuming the station will be fully operational during this. It shouldn't hamper the ability for passengers still to access. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, I yield. Thank you, Chair.
All right, seeing no further questions, ordinance number 34, 2026 is approved. Please sign it.
Thank you.
All right, Director, you got a presentation for us?
Yes, sir. And I'm going to bring up Director Barrett as well during the presentation, just in case there's questions on how we're financing the projects.
Okay.
And then after the presentation, I do have various staff in the audience, so as we need them, we'll bring them up to answer any specific questions council may have. It's the same as what's on your tablet. Thank you, council members. Today we're here to talk about the proposed project list for the 2026 capital improvement plan. Just as a reminder, this year we're coming to council with seeking approval of a project list. Later in the year, the Department of Finance will come back to City Council for authorization to use bond funds to replace the operating funds that are funding these projects. And so what we're doing today is we're presenting an overview of the project list, and then separately there has been legislation that's been introduced that will come through committees. So I'll be back, at the MSP committee in the future to review specific pieces of legislation. Bond Council requires that we have one piece of legislation for each type of funding. So there are several pieces of legislation depending on the type of bond that's used for that improvement.
Okay, Director, I know we are under a new program this year, but in the prior years, we have been presented the legislation right before summer recess. So I'm not exactly sure if that is going to fall this year, how the timing is going to fall, but we would appreciate it if we can get it, if you have to when you bring the legislation, bring it before we do a committee of the whole for the summer recess.
Mr. Chairman, I agree 100%. The legislation has already been introduced, so I anticipate that at your next committee, we'll be hearing legislation. My goal is, so it's much earlier in the year than last year, but my goal is to do this either at the end of the previous year or the very beginning of each year, because that aligns with our construction schedule better. The earlier in the year that we can get a project list approved, that means that we can hit the ground running with construction with all the exterior projects, whether it's roads or facilities in the springtime.
Okay, also, Director, can you take a step back and explain the reason for capital plans and the difference between when we make improvements for capital versus non-capital expense? Because we have new members here, and I just want them to make sure that they understand exactly what capital is and why it's the way it is.
Absolutely, Chairman. That's a good lead to go into the presentation here, and it'll hopefully give a reminder that for those who have been on council for a while, and also a bit of new information for the new members.
Okay.
So first of all, the capital improvement plan, we often call the CIP. The capital improvement plan is essential to the operations of the city of Cleveland and its residents, The plan prioritizes long-term capital projects and commits funds to ensure the city's public facilities, infrastructure, and equipment are sustainable now and in the future. So that's kind of our mission statement with regard to the capital improvement plan. There are three main ways that capital improvement plan dollars can be spent. One is on new construction, expansion, renovation, or replacement of existing facilities. And that can include the cost of land, engineering, architectural planning, and contract services needed to complete the project. The second is the purchase of major equipment with a useful life of at least 10 years. So that's important to keep in mind, that the useful life of what we purchase needs to have at least 10 years. And then the third is major maintenance or rehabilitation project for existing facilities, also with an economic life of at least 10 years. And that would be what we call capital maintenance. So I guess with capital maintenance versus regular maintenance, I would highlight the difference between repairing a boiler and replacing the boiler. That might be a good example of repairs versus capital maintenance. So there are different types of bonds that relate to different types of uses. These are the four most common types of bonds that we in capital projects in the general fund utilize. There are other types of bonds for utilities, for port control, but the ones that we particularly focus on are public facility bonds, which is funding is assigned to the repair or replacement of capital equipment or city-owned facilities. And this could include fire stations and salt domes. It includes design and construction services. The primary users of these types of funds are public works and public safety. Then we have recreation bonds. Funding is assigned to the repair and replacement of park equipment, recreation centers, and sports courts, including design and construction, and the primary user is parks and recreation. Here I would just flag that recreation centers, although they are public facilities, fall under the recreation bonds because of the type of use is recreation focused. The third type is road and bridge bonds. Funding is assigned to the repair and replacement of roads, bridges, and sidewalks, including design and construction services. And the primary users of these bonds are MOCAP and Public Works. And then finally, we also, from time to time, have the need for improvements at cemeteries, and those have a special type of bond that are specific to cemeteries. So we often have questions about how we prioritize projects, how we select projects, who selects them, and this graphic indicates how we go through that process. So at the very top, and the words are to the left, is department and council input. So departments and council members are asked to list and prioritize proposed capital projects. We have a shared spreadsheet, and we also have a project intake form. From the council standpoint, we work on requests through Brooke Sabin, and in the past, we would ask for a list of projects through Brooke in the fall of each year. Since we're kind of adjusting the clock on when we come to council, that request is probably gonna come to you earlier in the year and submitted to Brooke probably by Labor Day at the latest. But we'll work on that with Councilman Bishop and Brooke so that we notify council members. But Brooke would, in the past, put together an annual list for us to consider for the upcoming capital improvement plan proposed projects. So then to the right, you have prioritization. This past year, we had over 150 million of requests that were actually defined. There's lots of requests that were just ideas that didn't really have a scope or a budget associated with them. but this year we had about 150 million of combined capital requests. They were submitted by various departments, prioritized, and prioritization becomes critical. How we prioritize are on a list of criteria that are listed here. They include safety, physical condition, how bad is the physical condition, regulatory compliance, meaning is there, say, an EPA finding that we need to comply with? Legal compliance, is there a legal reason why we need to move forward with a particular project? Funding commitments, which comes into play very specifically with road and bridge projects. There's often a federal or state funding that is offered to us only if we can come up with a match in that particular year. And then mayoral and council priorities. So those are the criteria by which we prioritize which projects make it into the current plan or which ones are in future capital years. Then there's a committee that meets. It's called the Capital Improvement Plan Committee. And that committee reviews a first draft of the proposed plan that MOCAP puts together, and they provide guidance. The committee members are, it's led by Chief Tewin, and the members are Director Barrett, Chief McNair, Director O'Keefe, Director Mersman, and myself. Then if you go to the bottom left, there's a sort of continual process, if you will, to revise and fine-tune the proposed project list for the CIP. And we answer questions, receive feedback, and provide additional information or clarification until we have a proposed CIP that is presented to City Council. So another question is how do we determine the condition of the assets that we have, the buildings that we have? This is just a list of some of the assessments and plans that are continually being updated and worked on, but we have annual bridge inspections, Cleveland Moves, which is our city planning, mobility planning study that was completed last year. The Cleveland Parks and Rec Master Plan, which was adopted by City Planning Commission last April. We did a downtown public facility assessment plan, which was an assessment of all the city workspaces in the downtown. So that was 205 St. Clair, Public Auditorium, City Hall, and the Fives, also known as Erie View. We've been working on a fire and EMS facilities modernization plan. We have a new company that rates our pavement conditions, so the pavement condition rating. We do various transportation corridor studies. City Planning, for instance, is working on a corridor study for East 55th Street. There's park and recreation center assessments that are done either through consultants for specific things like HVAC systems, and also by staff, where we go out and do assessments every 3 years of our parks. And then there's also warm, safe, and dry assessments for city infrastructure that's completed on an as-needed basis for all of our public facilities, whether they're fire stations or service garages. And that's not an exhaustive list, but I did want to highlight some of the work that goes on behind the scenes. So the 2026 CIP, which we'll go through the projects here in a minute, I highlight here some of the more costly projects that we're proposing. So for public facilities, well, first of all, on the bottom left, you see that our total proposed capital request is just over $97.5 million. 38.1 million is related to public facility bonds. That includes City Hall modernization, Fire station number 28 improvements. 28 is the one that's on Carnegie Avenue next to the Fire Museum. East 65th Street roof replacement. This is the next phase of repairs and replacement to that roof. Salt Dome rehabilitation program. We've been really focused on this to preserve our salt and also preserve our environment from salt washing into the storm drains. And then city light and heavy vehicles. City vehicles fall under facilities, as does public safety equipment. So to the right, you have Parks and Recreation. We're proposing $13.3 million for park and recreation bonds, and that includes rec center parking lot and sidewalk improvements. In 2026, we're proposing the large parking lot at Zelma George, which is quite a mess, as well as sidewalk improvements at Impet Park. The next phase of the Rockefeller Greenhouse and Urban Forestry Complex is proposed for this year. Rec center locker room improvements, as we've been moving throughout the city, we've touched many wards. This project is related to Zone Rec. The Euclid Beach Arch Park. We had money a few years back about moving and restoring the arch. This creates a park around that arch's new home. And then a design study for the Stella Walsh Rec Center, which comes out of the Parks and Rec Master Plan to really make enhancements to the Stella Walsh and make it a regional center for our city. Bottom left is road and bridges. We're proposing about $45.5 million for that, which includes the residential street resurfacing program. It includes the final payment for the Woodhill Choice project, which they're currently underway with grading and site work, and they're building some new roads as part of that project. The tree damage sidewalk program, which follows the residential resurfacing the following year. The Superior Avenue separated bikeway. This is the final amount of money needed for the city's match. And then East 66th Street project, which is the Complete and Green Street project in Councilwoman House Jones's ward. And then finally, we have a small amount of cemetery bonds that we're proposing. The projects are the Erie Street Cemetery. This is in relation to their 200th anniversary, which is in 2026. Some improvements, and then a small amount for the Highland Park Cemetery Mausoleum for repairs, for capital repairs. The next slide is in relation to previous years. Apologies, it's a little bit small. Hopefully that's on your tablet, but 2023, for context, our total capital improvement plan was approved at $68 million. And you can see the first bar, if you can't read it, is roads and bridges. The second bar is recreation. The third one is public facilities. The smallest one on each of these would be cemetery. And then you have light vehicles and heavy vehicles on each of these. And you can see generally they're pretty much similar in which ones have priority. It's just different amounts in each year. So $68 million for 2023, which is the first one on the left. $67.5 million for 2024. Now, last year was a little bit different because we're changing streams here on how we're funding capital projects. So there was only a $36,044,000 capital improvement plan for last year. And that's why this year we're at $97,650,370, because the remainder of what would have been last year's CIP rolled over into this year's CIP. So there were projects that council members were counting on, for lack of a better word, that wouldn't have been put into place last year because we approved this very late in the year in, I think, November. And so last year we only put into place those projects that could be under contract or purchase orders put in last year. So that was just over 36 million, and the remainder rolled over to this year. So we basically have approximately 60 million this year plus the rollover from last year, and that's how we end up with that 97.6. I do want to point out that you could see that roads and bridges is a very high amount this year. And we do hear from council all the time that they want more money put into roadways. So you can see we have done that. Part of the reason why this is so high is because we have a lot of capital projects that require batches in this particular year. And that would be because of ODOT or state or federal funding. And also because of the 12 million for residential resurfacing is all coming out of bond funds for this year.
As that 12 million to be put in the 2026
Yes, sir. So
last year.
Last year we funded 12 million out of the operating budget and an additional 8 million out of capital funds.
Right. Okay. It was additional 8 million.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So last year we had 20 million.
Right.
That additional 8 was in the 2025 bond funds. The 12 came out of operating budget last year
Okay.
for a total of 20. Now I will say that because there was an additional amount last year, that increases the amount of money we needed to put into tree damaged sidewalks, sidewalk leveling, all the programs that come after the residential street resurfacing, because we have more streets that were under construction last year, so we have more sidewalks that need to be addressed this year. So the next slide that I have is, and you might be able to see this better on your tablet, but it's a percent, just to show you a percent. So if I go to road and bridges, which is that first bar, in 23 we spent 31% of the bond funds on road and bridges. 24 it was 39% on road and bridges. 2025 was 36% on road and bridges, and then this year we're at 47% on road and bridges, just for the sake of comparison. So this is something that was brought up during budget hearings, and it was in our budget book for our department. But we've worked with the finance department quite extensively over the last year to sort of fine-tune how we spend on capital projects, also fine-tune on how we close out projects. But we really took a look at our annual bond spending. And again, this is just those projects in the capital plan. This does not relate to the airport or to utilities. But in 2021, our bond spend was 59.2 million. 2022, which is the next bar, we were at 56.7 million. And again, this is what we spent in that calendar year of bond funds. 2023, it got bumped up to 72.8 million. 2024, it bumped up to 92.4 million. And then 2025, we had a lot of projects happening, and we were at $130.1 million. So we needed to know amongst ourselves, if we passed a capital improvement plan at $97 million, can we spend those dollars? And so this, of course, we're spending dollars from previous years as well, but this shows us that we have been ramping up, and we do have a good track record of spending bond funds. There are some big projects in here. I talked at budget hearings about the police headquarters. Those are big monthly invoices that come in, but it is something that we're processing, managing, and doing a good job of moving forward. So this slide shows for this 2026 projects, the number of projects by ward, and I would say that Ward 8 always, since the beginning of time, has more funding in it because that's where most of our public facilities are. So you have public auditorium, you have City Hall, you have 205 St. Clair, you have multiple public safety facilities, multiple recreational facilities, multiple parks, because that includes the downtown area. So that by its nature, the number of the ward might shift, but whoever has the downtown area always has a lot of funding, because we have facilities in particular that have major condition deficiencies that we need to improve. As far as the other wards, it really depends on the facility assessments that we talked about, and also the priorities that council members bring to us on the yearly basis, and how we can program those into the capital improvement plan. So these are just a couple of the completed projects. On the far left is Neff Park, which was a complete park restoration. To the right are the new locker rooms at Thurgood Marshall Recreation Center. That is a program where we're looking at all the locker rooms at our rec centers. We feel that if you can't feel good about going into the restrooms and changing, then you're not going to want to enjoy the rest of what the rec center might offer. Bottom left is Zelma George Recreation Center locker rooms. And then to the right is the Halloran Ice Rink roof. Just to highlight that one, the roof was so bad that as water would leak through the roof, it would create issues with the surface of the skating rink. So you really couldn't skate because you'd have water that would drip and then freeze on the ice. So in order to make this a facility that folks can really use going forward and enjoy, we had to really focus on the roof. We also had to focus on how to keep birds from roosting underneath the roof, because again, that was an issue with the ice. So kind of a specialty situation, but if we didn't focus on the roof, then residents can't enjoy the ice. So then the next one here, a few roadway projects. Carnegie Avenue Phase 1. We have multiple phases of Carnegie Avenue. That one finished last year. Now we have phases 2 and 3 that'll be under construction this year. To the right, a photograph of our residential resurfacing program. And that's split between the Division of Streets and MOCAP in 2025. At $12 million, it's anticipated that the Division of Streets would handle all of the streets in 2026. West Clinton Avenue resurfacing and ADA ramps. Just a photograph. We always have to replace ADA ramps anytime we touch the asphalt. So we do enormous amount of ADA ramps around our city every year in relation to those roadways. And then East 140th Street improvements, also another capital project that we handled last year. So with that, we're happy to take any questions. I know that there's, this is also a picture of, which was quite phenomenal. Many of us were out there to see it, but this is sort of the rigging that was used to move the Euclid Beach Arch from its current location, which is over a stub of 159th Street, over to a piece of land that the Division of Real Estate negotiated a donation from the McDonald's Corporation, which is adjacent to the Arch location. Great collaboration between all three divisions of MOCAP, because we resurfaced 159th and Euclid Beach Boulevard. We moved the Arch, and Real Estate negotiated a piece of land for it to sit on. Because of the historic structure, it couldn't move far. So we were thankful that we could negotiate a new location for the Arch immediately adjacent to it. So the actual project list is on your tablet, but so I'm happy to answer questions, or if Councilman, if you wanted me to dive into more projects, I'm happy to do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Director. That was a great presentation. So I got a couple initial questions, and I'm gonna turn it over to committee so they can get all their questions in. Now, on page 10 of the presentation, it says 2021-2025 yearly bond spend.
Yes.
And you have $130 million from 2025. But in our 5-year capital plan, improvement plan, we have a figure of $36 million. Now, what is the difference in those figures, Director? And
Yes.
explain where they are derived from.
Yes, sir. So what you see on this yearly bond spend for 2025 are any years that we received bond funds in the past, but we spent them in 2025. So in 2025, we were likely spending 2024 bond funds, 2023 bond funds, 2022, and in some older ones. So that's what you see on this slide. What you see with the amount of funding that we received in 2025, though that is the new allocation of bond funds that council approved in 2025. And so in 2025, council approved 36,044,000 of bonds, while we encumbered and put in purchase orders for those items. And in all likelihood, those projects, the spend wouldn't occur until 2026 because it was so late in the year.
Okay, all right. So these are older bond funds that we're still spending on, right? And on this page. So in 2024, it was $92 million. So why is the figures going up and up and up? Can you explain that? Because if they're old bond funds, we understand that year after year after year, we still have the bonds from prior years, but why such a big jump from 2024 to 2025? Is it the police headquarters?
So, Mr. Chairman, yes, police headquarters is a very large project that includes the 90 million that goes to the developer. That project will be completed this fall, and as we get closer to completion of the project, the amount of work that the developer is putting into the project has increased. So that is definitely one of those items. Another is that there was an increase in residential resurfacing from the 12 to 20 million, so that's another 8 million right there. And then to be perfectly candid with council, we understand that we need to do a better job to run our projects so that when we receive the funds that we don't sit on them and we move into construction quickly or into design quickly. So over the last year, we've really worked with the finance department on how can we optimize our spending. And that's a big reason why you see an increase there too, because we're being more prudent with schedules on how quickly we move them into projects, money into projects. And I would say that if the challenging thing about the capital improvement plan is that there are lots of great ideas that we receive from council and from the administration, but it normally takes us if we receive a request in the fall from any particular councilman or the administration, normally there's not enough time to define it properly enough to put it into the next year's CIP. Otherwise, we'd just be sitting on the funds. Perfect example, while it was a great project, was the Euclid Beach Arch restoration. Those were, I believe, 2022 bond funds, but we really didn't spend them until last year because it took a long time to figure out where are we going to move it, how do we shore it up, how do we do it properly, and those took studies and assessments while we were just sitting on the bond funds. So typically, it makes more sense to have a defined scope and budget before you put it in the next year's CIP.
Okay, all right. And Director, also I'm trying to figure out the spend for 2025 was 36 million, and then the spend for 2026 is 97 million. The difference, and so the
Not the spend though.
I mean, not to spend the
allocation.
bond. Yeah, the bond out. So, so in 2025, we delayed bonding out a lot of projects because we wouldn't get them done in 2025. Is that the reason? And we moved them to 2026?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct, because last year we spent a lot of time with you and Council President to figure out if the new way of funding capital projects that Director Barrett was proposing would be acceptable to all parties. And what that meant was that we didn't get to the council process. Legislation was in the hopper, but we didn't get to the council process until very late in the year. And we would have wasted money paying interest on bond proceeds if we included a full CIP so late in the year. It was November, I believe, when we had legislation passed in 2025.
Right. Okay, so Director, the reason, I understand that, but the reason why I'm asking because are we going to see a leveling out, maybe, a leveling out of bonds being, bonds requested for those years? Like, for instance, in 2026, we're going to bond out 97 million, but in 2027 we're going to come back and we're going to bond out even just a little bit more in 108 million. So are we going to see that number fluctuate some, or is it going to be pretty steady going from year to year to year?
So to the chair, before the director answers, I just want to clarify something. We're not going to necessarily bond out the 97 million. It's whatever contracts are executed. So
Okay.
we're just asking, I mean, this is just the presentation part of it, but when we come with legislation in the coming weeks, that'll be just to approve the project so that we have spend authority. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to, bond out the full amount. So I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, all right. So give us a snapshot. What time of the year will we know exactly how much we're going to bond out that year?
So to the chair, I would expect sometime in October when we can actually look at the contracts that we've executed. We can start doing the paperwork and the prep to do a bond deal beforehand because it's a lot of updating statistics and that sort of thing in paperwork. So we'll do all the prep on the front end, and then we'll take a snapshot of contracts we've executed, and we'll come to council with a line-by-line itemized amount. But that should happen sometime in October, I would imagine.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go to the council president.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to make sure that I understand. I know approximately 5 years ago, and this is something that I've seen recurring, and I bet you other areas can say this as well through the chair. We used to have a NOACA project, which was Thrive 10593, and there's other NOACA projects. How do you make a decision to just table those? And the reason that that's concerning to me is because we go to the community. I spend 3 years telling them that we're going to do these road diets and try to do things around, shrinking these roads on East 93rd and 105. It goes through our largest employer of the city of Cleveland, and it's the most heavily traveled route, but it's like somebody just abandoned it. And I'm trying to understand how many of those kind of proposals have you scrapped, or are they still somewhere with a shelf life, or what? Because it's hard for me to go back to the community after we spent 3 years saying we're headed in this direction, and then now everybody's asking me what's going on with Thrive 10593. And we received several significant grants from NOACA to do it, but I don't see it in the capital improvement plan. Through the chair.
So through the chair of the councilman, Thrive 105 is not canceled, but the northern part of the project is complete. So there's not a lot of the bells and whistles that were proposed for Thrive 105 north of Quincy, but essentially that part of the project is complete. So we've been having conversations with NOACA on how to invest the funding that they had allocated to the project for what we're considering a phase one, which would be 105 Quincy down to Buckeye. And if they allow us to do that, then the city wouldn't have a local match for that portion of the project. But our argument to them is there's still needs in the community, but the project has fundamentally changed since north of Quincy is essentially completed. Now there are needs south of Buckeye as well, but this at least aligns with the Woodhill Choice area, and that's what we're currently focused on. Once we know if NOACA is agreeable to that, then of course we have to go through more engagement and talk to the public about what elements are eligible for CMAQ funding and what elements do they still wish to see, because it's been quite some time since there's been public engagement on this project. But that's what we're currently working on. But the project, as recently as 2 weeks ago, we had just an internal discussion with MOCAP and planning to try to figure out how we can reallocate the funds for a phasing that makes sense for what the current needs are.
Okay, through the chair, I would request that I have my office sets up a time to get an update with you about that, because it was supposed to go, I think, all the way to 93rd and Miles. And if I'm hearing you now, you're saying it's pretty much you're proposing to go to Buckeye.
That's
which
for the
would-
first phase,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's something that I think all of us on the southeast side, including my colleague Councilman Bishop, might want to, and Councilwoman Gray might want to have a discussion, because that was we were kind of hoping that would kind of be catalytic to bring us some change along that East 93rd Street corridor. The second thing that I have through the chair, and I would love to have that update if we could, and it'll probably behoove us to have the two other council members that represent that area, just so that we can have a good understanding. The second issue that I would like to ask about is with the Brick Streets, with the Brick Street plan. Excited to hear that we're going to do some things around Murray Hill. Is that not a full replacement? That is just repairing where the bricks are damaged, and I know that Councilman Polisic has been advocating for, like, is it where the utility cuts are taking place, or how would that be structured, and how much will we be doing with Murray Hill?
Through the chairman, Councilman, it is not a complete reconstruction, but I'll have Rick Swistowski, Manager of Engineering and Construction, give you more of a technical explanation of how we determine where we need to make some improvements.
Okay, and in addition to that, because I know that it was proposed to be about $500,000 when you were looking at it, but I think that the bids came in a little lower. So it'd be interesting to see how much the restoration that you're trying to do, and if there's further need for other restoration, I would like to know. Through the chair.
To the chair, to the council president, the director said it correctly. We would look to go out and repair the sections of brick that are damaged and need to be replaced in order to make the street rideable. If we go out there and find additional spots that we may have missed or have gotten worse over this period of time when we put the bid out, we'll address those also.
And that's for all of them?
Yes, sir, the ones that are on the list.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Council President. I'm going to go to Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Switolski, what about the ones that aren't on the list?
To the council member, what we've done is we will have a letter hopefully this week to all the council members noting what brick streets they wanted to see done. Is then up to that council person to make a commitment to the funds so that then we can put it into the contract and get that work done.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Switolski, these streets that are listed in the red brick, have those council members committed funds?
To the chair, to the councilman, we have not had a commitment of funds other than the ones listed in the CIP.
Okay, so Murray Hill, Simpson Court, Fur Avenue, and Owosso Avenue, the representatives from those wards have already allocated funds for those streets?
So, Mr. Chairman, the councilman, so back when we proposed this Brick Street ordinance to council, we iterated that it was really based upon council participation in the streets. And if you recall, I don't know if you were at that meeting, but there was a finance committee meeting where folks were adding brick streets into the ordinance because by the name, each brick street needed to be listed by name in the ordinance.
So, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I know that I had two streets, right? I had 143rd and I had Leroy. And I haven't heard anything regarding those two streets since I submitted the list. So I'm just wondering how they didn't get on the list, but these specific ones did.
Through the chairman and the councilman, these specific streets are on the list to be funded with the capital plan for really three different reasons. Whitman, Simpson Court, and Fur Avenue are on the list because of consistent issues that we've been having with those streets as the administration. Murray Hill is on the list as our premier brick street in the whole city. And then Osawa is on this list. It's a very small street, but it relates to improvements we're making at Warsaw Park. So that's how these were selected. And so These were taken off the list that we intended council to fund because of these specific reasons.
So, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I'll assume that no council member has allocated funds for these streets yet.
Through the chairman of the council, correct. We do
Okay.
not need money from the council members for these streets.
Okay. Do you know what I don't see on this list, Mr. Chairman, to the director? I don't see
sir.
Cleveland Public Power. And when I sit here and I look at your public facilities, right, and we're putting $22.2 million into public facilities, but $8.65 million is going into City Hall, including whatever the modernization of City Hall is, right, with $7 million going to redo the basement, which no one's ever seen. And then we're putting more than $800,000 to the finance administration office, $600,000 to the third floor improvements. But for years, I've been asking for MOCAP and capital dollars to go into the improvement of Cleveland Public Power. And $0. This administration, Mr. Chairman, to the director, refuses to upgrade Cleveland Public Power. Absolutely refuses. The mayor sat here in his letter of transmittal and he told us that there's going to be a plan. And I chair utilities, and I have seen 0 plans. There's been an assessment done, we know how much money we need, and the administration is refusing to invest in the public utility that the city owns. I don't know how much clearer I could be that Cleveland Public Power needs an investment from the city. We're doing things like, and there's nothing wrong with these projects, but when I sit here and we deal with the issues we deal with Cleveland Public Power, but then we're turning around and we're putting money into dog parks and walking trails for dogs. And I'm not saying that they're not needed, but where are the priorities? We have 70,000 accounts, over 100,000 Cleveland residents who utilize our public utility, and the administration refuses. For years, I've been asking, through 2 administrations, and you've been here the whole time, Director, through 2 administrations, I don't know who else I need to vent my frustration to, but when I see stuff like this, when I see $100,000 for a truck, when I research that truck and the most expensive one I can find is $60,000, I have a problem with the amount of money that we're spending. And we had this conversation during budget about how much we're spending on things. $60,000 for a riding lawnmower? Are you kidding me? And we can't invest in something that affects our residents every single day. It has become overly frustrating. Even looking at your list, and I'm not pitting the east side against the west side, very little dollars are going into the west side. Very little dollars. I sit here and I listen to my colleagues talk about how we don't invest or the east side gets absolutely nothing, right? And then every time we see something, all we see is things that are going on the east side. And that's great, that's marvelous. I've never voted no against any projects on the east side, but when are we going to start doing some investment in the west side? You've got the Ridge Road transfer station in my ward, and it doesn't represent I don't represent it. So I don't even know if the administration knows where the west side is. And Mr. Chairman, to the director, this is just my frustration, not geared toward you, but it's my frustration across the board. We see 0 projects or very little money going into Ward 15, very little money going into Ward 13, very little money going into Ward 14. But I turn around and I look at, we can't invest in CPP, but we can put bike lanes at the midway. What's the priority? So, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I don't know if I'm directing this toward you or the mayor himself or his administration, but we have got to come up with something. Are these projects here etched in stone, Mr. Chairman, to the director, or do we have the ability to move dollars around?
Mr. Chairman, the councilman, this is a presentation today. There's no legislation associated with it.
So if there is dollars to be moved around, we still have that opportunity to do so, correct?
Mr. Chairman, as legislation it hits the committees, that would be the opportunity for changes to be made.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to the director, once that legislation hits the committee, you want us to vote no on them? To say, oh no, we need to do this? Or should we work with the administration now before these come to committee if we want to move some dollars around?
Mr. Chairman, so legislation's already introduced, so the way to amend legislation would be at the tables.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, in public facilities, what's the on-call professional services? OCPS, what is that?
So, Mr. Chairman, as you, to the councilman, as you know, we have a very small staff of engineers and architects. So on-call professional services are the engineering and architectural firms that we use to, say, do a roof assessment or to, say, design how the drainage at a salt dome should be connected to the storm sewer instead of or to the sanitary instead of the storm sewer.
So, Mr. Chairman, to the director, through our capital project funds, we're hiring consultants.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the safety gunshot detection, Mr. Chairman, to the director, can you explain what that is?
Yes, sir. So that was one of the top priorities of the Department of Public Safety, and it's to institute a gunshot detection system in the city of Cleveland, and it's over a multi-year period.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, is this flock?
I believe they're pivoting and doing an analysis of all potential types of
All right, well,
systems.
Mr. Chairman, that's something that the committee needs to keep a keen eye on, and that they're not trying to push something like flock through under the auspice of another name. I'm not saying that you're doing that, Director, but I've never heard of the on-call. I mean, I've never heard of something just safety gunshot detection. That's pretty broad. So when that legislation, if it comes to the table, make sure that it's spelled out and we know exactly what it is. But Mr. Chairman, to the director, just some of the prices on this stuff, it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if the city overpays for things or if we have to go out the way we do to spend dollars on something. And Mr. Chairman, to the CFO, you seem to be a relatively conservative individual when it comes to the city's money. You know, we heard last week how much money we spent on a refrigerator, you know, for the Collinwood Rec? Yeah, for Collinwood Rec. None of us sitting at this table or in this room would pay that kind of money for a refrigerator for our house. So why would we do that for our rec centers? But Mr. Chairman, to the director, I can't stress enough how we need to find something to start the process of upgrading Cleveland Public Power. I mean, I don't know, to my colleagues, I don't know what else I can say or do, because I've been talking about it, and we hear there's a plan, but then we don't see the results of whatever the plan would be. So whatever you could do to work with me, Director, Mr. Chairman, to the director, you know, I'd be more than happy to do what we can in order to find some money to upgrade Cleveland Public Power. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. Just to clarify, Councilman Casey, your concerns about CPP. Since CPP is an enterprise fund, right? Will that go into the enterprise fund? Will that stay into the CIP? Can you clear that for me?
Well,
Can you clarify that for me, Director?
through the chairman and the councilman, so since I've been involved, I don't recall CPP being included in the CIP. They are an enterprise. Typically, they handle their own affairs. However, it is possible for the general fund to invest in an enterprise fund, but typically they're separated and completely church and state separated.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could key in on that, West Side Market is an enterprise fund. Highland Golf Course is an enterprise fund. And for years, the administration has been coming to us looking for the general fund to offset those enterprise funds. So enterprise funds, Mr. Chairman, cannot go cannot offset the general fund, but the general fund most definitely 100% can help offset an enterprise fund. We do it every single year and even this year to the golf course at almost $1 million. We've been throwing money into that, so if what's good for the goose should be good for the gander on something that the city owns that affects over 100,000 residents in this city.
Okay, all right, for sure. That's a great clarification. Next, I'm gonna go to Councilman Plinsick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, and to the administration. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing and for your deep dive into the whole issue of capital improvements and capital projects. And let me just say this. I've observed a lot of things over the years, and I think for the first time, I believe in the first time, we have a very competent director of MOCAP who's, in my estimation, is really trying to get a handle on things that have gone on. And so, and I appreciate that, and I think you've been trying to assemble an adequate or proper staff, because in the day, we had such a large architectural department and other sections and divisions. We used to be able to design everything in-house. We never had to go outside, except it was for big projects. And we've come a long way since then, unfortunately, the wrong direction. And so we struggle with, as it pertains to design, we struggle with capital dollars. So I'm going to jump right in. Do we, Mr. Chairman, to the director, do we actually know what we own in the city of Cleveland? Is there such a list of what we own?
So, Mr. Chairman, we don't have a list per se, but we have databases of our properties, and we also use county databases as well in our tax database.
Okay, so I know Ms. DeGennaro's here in attendance. I spent yesterday, Sunday, late morning, I drove my entire ward, 44 miles on my odometer, checking on streets, working on my street list. And, one lot after another, we know land bank lots, but then there's properties and lots that I am not even clear who owns them, okay? And that ties me into my next question, Mr. Chairman. We have been waiting for a facilities utilization document, list of the condition of each of our parks, playgrounds, city facilities. Where is that, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
So, Mr. Chairman, the councilman, my apologies if you've been asking for that, because I've heard this many times at budget hearings, but we have a variety of different assessments that I'm happy to provide to you. And I apologize if you've been asking for it, but it was not on my radar to provide it to you. But we do a couple of things. Staff does their own assessment of parks. We do a variety of assessments on a technical basis, whether it's for a roof or a cracked floor. And so we have a variety of different assessments to provide
Mr. Chairman, I thought there was going to be, maybe it was my misunderstanding, there was going to be a major document presented to council on everything we own, the status of it, police stations, fire stations, rec centers, parks, playground, a rating system. This is what needs to be fixed. This is what good. There's nothing to that effect?
So the councilman through the chairman of the councilman, what we've done those in the past, but what we've found is we put a heck of a lot of money into a large scale assessment, and it doesn't really meet our needs as far as how to go from an assessment into a repair program or replacement program. So now we really focus on where do we have an issue, analyze it so that we can go into repairs.
But, Mr. Chairman, and again, I don't want to waste my time, but why aren't we assigning a couple staff people to do that, or hire staff people to go out and do an assessment of all of our facilities? The reason I'm saying this, it's 2026. How many buildings do we own?
I don't know that number off the top of my head.
The figure that was just given to me recently, it might be correct, it might be wrong, 190.
Okay.
Rec centers, police stations, firehouses, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Some of them go back to the 1800s. there's some way in 2026, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleague, that we got to get a really assessment of what we own, what condition it's in, and do we, quote unquote, need to continue to keep this building or not? And we've had this discussion in the course of the budget hearings where we're renting space. That came up in various departments and divisions. Health department, police department, da 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 da. We're renting outside facilities, yet we have city buildings. Okay, so what and I was thinking about this when I'm in my car yesterday driving around. We really got to get an assessment, maybe for the first time since I've been here, of what we really own, what needs to be enhanced, what needs to be repaired, and what we need to unload. Okay, especially on some of these properties, vacant lots and properties that went. I'm not talking land bank stuff now, okay? I got all this stuff along the marginals that went in the 60s to what we call freeway take, and nobody knows who owns all this stuff. Okay?
We know who owns those, yes.
Well, then I'm glad you do, because then
And we've worked with you on
because I have
those.
a problem getting the grass cut on a lot of that stuff. I want to just jump in quickly. The red brick street. You know, everybody knows around this table how I feel about red brick streets. With the new area I picked up, I must have picked up a dozen red brick streets. And what the message I'm trying to get across to everybody on this side of the table is that if we take just the bare minimum steps to fix some of those spots on those streets, they'll last forever. I'm looking at streets that are 100 freaking years old. You know, in the time that I've been here, this is my 14th term, some streets I have resurfaced 3 times already. Residential streets, due to the truck traffic on them. A red brick street, you don't have to touch it. So what I'm trying to say, I said this to the mayor, I'm saying is, we have to come up, and that's why I've recommended with the reconciliation plan that water and WPC kick money into a legacy restoration program, because they're the ones that put the holes in the streets for the most part, okay, with the utility cuts. We got to get a handle on the red brick streets. I had 38 of them prior to the redistricting, and I didn't keep a track as I was riding around yesterday because I was looking at the asphalt streets. But again, I don't have to touch the red bricks. They've been there. And if we just come up with a reasonable plan to fix some of the bad spots, they'll be around until the second coming. So I'm going to dig in on the red brick streets when we start the reconciliation, which is going to start today. I'm digging in, Finance Director. Get ready. Red brick. Red brick. Okay? Councilman Casey's comments about CPP. He's raised it. Some of my other West Side colleagues have raised it. I've raised it. George Voinovich, Dennis Kucinich realized the importance of CPP. George Voinovich did. Mike White did. I really can't tell. I'm assuming Mayor Campbell did, and I know Frank Jackson did. The problem is that nobody looked 20 years down the pike, 30 years down the pike. So what Councilman Casey is talking about today is a system that in many parts of the city are well older than 100 years of age, the CPP grid. We got to figure out, and with the demand, look at our own homes. Look at all electronic devices in our own homes. There's more demand on the grid than ever before. Councilman Casey has been advocating this because what he's talking about, and he's never really said it at the table, but we are at a fine line. This system, we could face some major outages in this city. I'm talking major outages and major problems if this grid is not addressed in the city of Cleveland. We always brag that we own Cleveland Public Power, but we have to maintain it. And I want to, hopefully through the director and you, director, because I believe both of you are very competent. I commend both of you because finance directors come back with some very innovative, and the chair of this committee and I have been out at the firehouses and police stations, and that's why I'm really appreciative of the chairman who really has taken the leadership in trying to get buildings repaired, and I appreciate that immensely. But we have to do things differently, and you're proposing we do things differently, and I'm appreciative of that. So let me just drill in on some other things. Golf course, how much are we going to spend on capital this year at the golf course or over the next 5 years? Highland.
Through the chairman of the council, and so there's just one proposed capital improvement at the golf course. It's about $1.1 million, and it's for the pump house and
Okay.
irrigation improvements related to that.
Okay.
Which-
So
which
not
is-
only we subsidizing it, but now we're going to be asked to put another 1.1 million into the golf course on top of the money that we've put in the past. And I'm going to say to my colleagues again, we have got to decide what we're going to do here. We're subsidizing it, and now we're asked to put capital repairs into it. And every person around this table needs capital improvements in their neighborhood. So that's going to be another discussion that I'm going to try to get into. On your presentation, Mr. Chairman, to the director, you indicated on your priorities. Find it here.
Is it the slide with the graphic,
Okay.
Councilman?
Your priority page, that you have annual bridge inspections. Cleveland moves. Define Cleveland moves to me, because that's second in your priority list.
Oh, through the chairman of the councilman, this is just alphabetical. There's no.
Okay, but what is
Yeah.
Cleveland moves?
So Cleveland Moves is a planning study by our planning staff related to mobility, which means walkers, riders, rollers, people that need low stress passage from point A to point B.
Yeah, I'm trying to maintain low stress here too. Okay, with myself, low stress, dealing with the stuff I have to deal with. Is there a dollar amount associated with Cleveland moves?
Mr. Chairman, yes. So in the capital improvement plan, there's $1.5 million associated with Cleveland Moves. And so that,
This is, in essence, this is bike paths, walkways. The best way to sum it up: bike paths, walkways, right?
Mr. Chairman, it is that, but it's also slowing speed. So it
Okay.
is maybe creating delineators in between a bike path and the drivers. It could be improvements, hardening
Okay.
elements in the roadway.
I love those delineators, man. Let me tell you, I love those things. Don't put another one in my neighborhood, okay? Believe me, don't put another delineator in my neighborhood. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Chairman, to my honorable colleagues and to the administration, we've got to really set our priorities here. Delineators are not my priority. I will tell you that right now. Speed tables are right up there. So if you want to talk about speed tables with Cleveland Moves, I'm more than willing to hear that discussion. But we have got to get our priorities straight here. Because when I looked at my streets, and I looked at my colleagues, some of my colleagues shared their maps with the F and D rated streets. Most of our wards are F and D rated streets. We got to get a handle on this. And I mean, I'm telling you, in 2026, because again, I have great confidence in you, in your team, we got to get a hand, and with the new finance director, relatively new, we got to really get a handle on how we're going to address, because we're always behind the curve in this city. We got to figure out how to at least get on even keel here. And so I'm looking forward to these, to the discussions about reconciliation. We got to focus on quality of life issues. That's what I continue to hear from my residents, quality of life. They're not talking to me about the lakefront. Not in my neighborhood. They're not telling me I need to give more money to Jimmy Haslam and the Browns. Not in my neighborhood. They want their streets resurfaced. They want their parks improved. They want playgrounds enhanced. They want the city buildings our city facilities improved. Mr. Chairman, I was riding around. I went past the engine company number 31. I should have CC'd you. 3 garage doors for the firehouse. Two of the 3 garages have broken windows on the doors. Plywood over the doors. So I have to tell you, I sent out an interesting email to Director Drummond over the weekend. Right there at 5 Points, the firehouse, 2 of the 3 doors have broken windows and wood over the windows. How embarrassing. How embarrassing. So I'm putting my street list together. So, Mr. Chairman, on that list, I don't know. I got the list, which I had in my car, but there's no dollar amounts associated with it.
Mr. Chairman, is that the Brick Street list, or is that the?
The regular street, the F&D street list.
That would have come from the Division of Streets, so I haven't seen the list that you have.
Okay, so you didn't see the F&D rated streets?
Through the chairman, no, but you know.
Okay, and you ought to take a look at this. You need to see, that's even shocking for me to hear that you haven't seen this. This is unbelievable, the condition of our streets and with this terrible winter we've had, the freezing thawing. So I'm going to try to figure out why, unless my colleagues did you get dollar amounts associated with the? No, I mean, so I need a, because I'm putting my list together and we're all scrimping for funds here, for money. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for all this stuff.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, so last year we started with a new company to rate our pavement conditions, and I just wanted to highlight that for all of council because in the past it was people driving around in cars doing 1/3 of the city at a time each year. And so the challenge with that, as skilled as those people are, you're not going to have the same person doing every single street, so you have a different benchmark possibly for you versus you for when you're rating the streets.
Okay.
So now we have a company that goes around with cars, kind of like Google Earth, that has cameras on the car, and they determine cracks, they determine bad utility cuts, they determine potholes, they look at the condition of the sidewalks, and now it's consistent among the whole city.
Okay.
And they did the whole city. And now what we're doing is we're taking that data, and it's going to take some time this year to do that, but using that data to determine how do we go from the current condition to a C rating of all of our streets, and how much do we need to invest each year to do that. And our request to you is that that you give us the time to do that analysis, because we want to do it the right way.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that the current system is working, but we're doing that analysis.
Again, I appreciate that, Mr. Director. I don't need someone to tell me what's an F&D rated street. I can see by looking at it, riding down it, okay? And so we got a problem, and I think this gives me an observation about the council. You have 15 members today who I believe are really more so than ever before geared to quality of life conditions in our neighborhoods. You have a chairman of this committee who wants to see things improve, and he's demonstrated that. We have to do things differently here today. Councilman Casey, and I'm gonna wrap it up. Councilman Casey mentioned about the cost. He brought up about the refrigerator, which gave me agita out there at the Collinwood Rec Center when I saw what that doggone thing cost. But I'm looking at the list. You have in your document that's been provided to us the cost of a police car at $80,000. Now, I know we're not buying Cadillacs, but someone's going to have to explain to me how a police vehicle costs $80,000 a pop, okay? Someone's going to have to give me that one and explain that one to me, okay? Because Councilman Casey touched on, when I look at what some of this stuff is costing, I'm saying, the Italian side, Madone, okay? I'm going to tell you what some of this stuff is. I can't figure out how some of this stuff is costing us. So maybe the commissioner of motor vehicle repair You're not buying Lexus and Cadillacs, are you, for the Division of Police? What are you buying here?
Through the chair to the councilman, those costs include the upfitting of the vehicle. So there's a tech package that includes the computers, the modems, and all the other equipment that goes along with that. So that's the base price of the vehicle plus the IT plus the upfitting.
You're telling me 80, because the viewing public's watching it, to put a police unit on the street today, you're telling us it's 80 G's.
Through the chair to the councilman, yes. And I would tell you that compared to other cities and other suburbs, that's less money than some spend.
Yowza, as my mother would say. I mean, but we have to again figure out how we can figure out how to reduce our purchasing costs. Which, when you look at this stuff, this is incredible. What it's costing us to buy equipment. Mr. Casey touched about the riding lawnmower. What 60 grand for a riding lawnmower? What is that about?
Through the chair to the councilman, again, with that riding lawnmower, there are some implements, cutters, and attachments that come along with that. So that has to do with the total overall price. Pickup truck, same thing. We install plows, V-box spreaders, and other upfitting equipment. So when you look at the base price of the vehicle, that price is included with that.
Well, I'm confident that the chair of this committee and my colleagues, we're going to zero in on all this stuff, because we got to figure out how to stretch our dollars. All of us need road repair. We need our parks and playgrounds upgraded. We need city buildings repaired and upgraded. I don't have to tell you about the firehouses, and the chairman, through his leadership and that of the new finance director, that we worked together to get that $21 million to fix up police stations. But this was years and years of neglect. And so what's encouraging to me is that there's 15 of us here now who's saying, okay, we know the mistakes of the past. We know what was done in the past was not adequate. We have to go down a different path. So with Jamie and the finance director, I'm hoping that we can do things differently going forward. We got to do things differently, because if not, we're never going to get ahead of this stuff. And I'm committed to working with my colleagues to make some significant changes and improvements in 2026. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate
All right,
the work you do.
All right, thank you, Councilman Polensek. We're going to go to Councilman Starr next.
Thank you, Chairman, and to the directors for coming today. Quickly, as I looked at this presentation and I looked at everything that's going on, I just want to make sure I get clarification. For previous past years, it's hard for me to go deeper into what happened prior to me being elected to the position that I serve. And one of the things I would like to ask for just clarification, through the years, the last 4 years, how much carryover cash have we actually utilized into capital improvement projects through the chair?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, the carryover has been built up over time. So it's not like we always had the carryover that we have now. And the level of the carryover now is allowing us to go and implement this new borrowing system, because we need to have a funding source. I'm not aware of any use of the carryover in the past. But again, I just want to stress that we're not permanently using the money out of the carryover. We're going to reimburse ourselves at the end of the year for whatever is spent or executed. So I don't want to think of those dollars as just going out the door and not coming back. We will be, through debt proceeds, reimbursing that.
So just for clarification, coming into this year, we had close to $89 million carryover from 2025 through the chair to the director of finance.
So through the chair to the councilman, I just want to correct one thing. The directors made me aware that the $12 million last year for repaving actually did come out of the carryover. So that's the one instance that I'm aware of, but nothing before. And I'm sorry, I was discussing that with the director. I didn't hear your second question.
Yes, so my point is the amount of carryover cash that we have from 2025 to 2026 is 89 million, roughly?
Through the chair to the councilman, yeah, it's 90 million.
About 90 million. And out of that 90 million, we're trying to utilize how much for capital improvement projects?
So through the chair to the councilman, we did a transfer to capital in the budget, and it's still dependent on reconciliation and what we do there. But we put a transfer capital in there for 90 million to put towards these 97 million in projects. And then the difference would be, if we were to spend or execute contracts on that full 97 million, which is not a definite, then we would use a short-term instrument to make up the difference between the 90 and 97.
Okay. And then through the chair to the table, rather, so I look and notice that the bond spending has increased, right, from 59 million in 2021 to over 130 million in 2025, correct?
That's
And-
correct, Councilman.
And then through the chair, what is our current total outstanding bond debt? And how does the 2026 capital improvement affects the debt services over the next 5 to 10 years?
So through the chair to the councilman, there's several different types of debt that we have, not just GO bonds. We also have slits and stadium bonds. Those are available. I don't want to start shouting out numbers off the top of my head, but those are all included in the presentation we did for the retreat. So there's actually a chart in there that shows you how much debt we actually have outstanding by category.
Okay, I just want to make sure that is important to understand what we're actually doing here. Like you said, this is something new that we're trying to roll out. Just because it doesn't mean it's the best effective way. And just because something has been done consistently over the time doesn't mean it needs to be revamped all the time. And one of the things that I think, from my standpoint, is with us having close to $90 million of carryover cash and putting it all into, vast majority of it into capital improvement projects, oftentimes put you at a restriction of not getting things done for your neighborhood that is not included in the capital improvement projects. So my question would be through the chair, through the director, is it a case that you need all $90 million for this new initiative? Or is this a way that we could look at something to say potentially 60 million of that carryover goes into that fund and another 30 million goes into a fund designated for council possible projects? If that's something that we can definitely talk about, or I would ask one of the members of the table to speak. Is it true that you need all 90 million with this new model, or can we slow steady it and make sure we don't end up into a crash course in which we can say with that carryover, here's $60 million as opposed to 90 million through the chair?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, so keep in mind that the CIP is 97, which is actually more than the 90. So anything you take away from the 90 would mean that we'd have to probably go out and borrow, and would kind of defeat the purpose of going out and changing this program. The distinction I want to make, and I'd be happy, I don't know that I had time to meet with you one-on-one specifically on the changes to the program. I'd be happy to do that to explain the difference. But I just want to make it very clear that when we're using it for capital projects, again, the money's not out the door and then just gone. We're actually going to reimburse ourselves with the new debt program at the end of the year. If you use this money and you reallocate it for neighborhoods and you just go out and spend it, it's gone. We're not going to be able to reimburse ourselves. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at that and as we go into reconciliation.
All right, and as you say that, Director, when you talk about, okay, we have 90 million in the bank and we're trying to brawl against it and then we'll reimburse ourselves, what does that actually look like? Just for the viewing public as well, because hearing you say we're going to reimburse ourselves is like, what is that through the chair?
So through the chair to the councilman, we're essentially loaning ourselves the money throughout the year. So we're using cash on hand for these for whatever contracts are executed, and then we'll have a list of everything that we went out and used that cash on hand and make ourselves whole in the end by going out and issuing debt. So anything we use the carryover for or the available cash will have to be cleared by bond counsel to make sure that we can actually go and borrow. So the way the process works, and again, I'm happy to sit down and go through the nitty-gritty with you, but the first change will be coming with formal CIP legislation this year. This is just the presentation, but Director DeRosa is bringing actual legislation to get approval of the projects with a funding source, in this case, the carryover. And then at the end of the year, every year at the same time, around October, we'll come with bond legislation to reimburse ourselves. And it'll be more transparent because we'll have a list of actual contracts and dollar amounts related to each individual project that we can, that will accompany the bond legislation. So through the chair to the councilman, also just want to emphasize, and I think we talked about this during budget hearings and in the retreat as well. This year, or I should say 2025 alone, the change in the program, we did not borrow $35 million that we normally would have borrowed. If you look at that over time with debt service at current market conditions, that comes out to about $68 million in debt service over 30 years. So that number was used a lot during budget hearings, that we kept that liability off our books by changing this program.
Thank you. And so one of the things is that also within this presentation, the number and the dollar amount, just from the trend standpoint, we have roads and bridges. They jumped from 13 million in 2025 to 45 million in 2026. Could anyone speak to what caused this increase or this spike? What is actually going on as far as potential new funding or any federal dollars to help to be able to support roads and bridges? Do we have anything we could talk about from that chair to the director?
Yes, sir. Through the chairman of the council, and thank you for that question. It's a good question because there's a couple reasons why we've increased to 45 million, 45.5 million this year. One is that all 12 million is coming for residential resurfacing is coming out of this capital improvement plan. As director said previously, last year that 12 million came out of the carryover budget, and only the 8 million that council added to that budget came out of the 2025 CIP. So you have an additional 12 million just because of the residential resurfacing. And in addition, we have a heck of a lot of projects this year, next year, and the one after that are federally or state funded that require our match to be put into the project in a particular year to keep it on schedule. And so the reason why that number is so high is because we have, and the actual projects are listed, in the capital improvement plan, but we're required to put in our match money now for those projects. And I should say, the federal funds through NOACA, those are scheduled out, 5 years into the future, and now it's just time to put those projects into play. And state funding, typically they get programmed maybe a year and a half before construction starts. But there's a sequence of events when you have to actually come to the table with your money.
Okay, and within that standpoint, I know that you did through the presentation that there is a capital improvement committee, which includes administration officials. What role does council have in those revisions? Chair.
Through the chairman and the councilman, so currently what we do is we seek input from council up front. We also, I think, everyone at the table, we have meetings with me and my staff on a regular basis throughout the year where we hear you and we help fine tune programs that or projects that are have a specific budget and a specific scope that we can put into the CIP. But this is the process where we discuss with City Council as a whole. I do generally have a few meetings with Councilman Bishop and City Council staff leading up to this to try to talk about sort of the bigger picture, how we're funding projects and how we're spending on projects, and making sure that council has some oversight on that as well. But this is really the process where we talk about those projects.
And through Mr. Chairman, within the scope of the work that you're doing in MOCAP when in regards to capital improvement projects, how many projects in the 2023 SIP are still incomplete? Through the chair.
Through the chairman, the councilman, 2023. Hold on one second.
So, and as he looks through, Mr. Chairman, my question of that is to see where we are at in completing those projects from 2023, to see where we're trying to start or finish in 2025, and see if we're any backload or bottleneck or any issues that are going on.
Through the chairman, the councilman, Calgary and Neff Park renovations were included in 2023. Those projects are finished. They might be in punch list, but they're finished. We had the Rockefeller Yard Clean and Green, that's completed. The new football stadium, JFK High School, that's under construction currently. Central Recreation Center Phase 4 is awarded, but was on hold due to the arson and the, we had lawsuit and mediation needed before we could move forward. Rec Center locker rooms, they're not completed, but a few of those Rec Center locker rooms are completed. The rest are in the works. Zelma George dewatering is currently under construction. The roof and envelope packages, I'd have to look to see which buildings that included. But that's just an example of the public safety or the recreation facilities. Fire station under facilities, Fire Station 26, that's completed. On-call professional services, we worked on that. Ridge Road Transfer Station, that's complete. Upgrades at the police for video wall upgrade, that's complete. Fire station modernization, essentially complete, still finalizing a little bit of it. Radio system for police, that's complete. New boat dock, that was kind of canceled. We have leases with the Metro Parks at no cost to allow our boats to be stored near the water's edge, which is more effective than creating a new boat dock. Root pruning machine that was acquired. Female facilities Phase 3 might be in punch list, but essentially completed. Vehicles we purchased, and then we had a variety of firefighter and police equipment that was purchased. And then as road and bridges, Carnegie Phase 1, that was completed. Professional services ongoing. Major bridge repair, typically we complete what's needed for that. We had street repair program, which was completed. Woodhill Choice, which is underway. Circle Square, 3 phases of 4 have been completed. Tree damage sidewalks, Payne Avenue Phase 1 was completed. Quigley Road and West 3rd completed. 50/50 CWD streets completed. Memorial Bridges Loop is about to go out to construction by ODOT. Tree planting, I'd have to look into that with urban forestry. Residential street resurfacing was completed for that year. And then the Eagle Avenue lift bridge, we had a delay on that project, but these particular funds may have been expended, but the project itself will be delayed until next winter. So those are the projects that were approved in '23. Now, I know I'm happy to give you, something in writing on that, but it just gives you a flavor that we are trying to do good work to get these projects underway.
Most definitely, Director. You're one of my A callers. You answer the phone when I call you, so that's always a star. But definitely, as I wrap up, to Mr. Chairman, one of the biggest things is with this new program, I think we need to properly vet this as a council. And what I mean by that is we have capital improvement projects. MOCAP does a great job of getting things done. But when we have a one-time carryover or $90 million and we're talking about we're going to brawl against or loan to each other and give it back on the back end, at the end of the year, our residents going to say what happened all year with the stuff that you need in your neighborhoods. And then also as we talk about making tough decisions and choices, we have to talk about, obviously, what are we actually doing with these cemeteries? What is our long-term capital plan for cemeteries? How are we going to make sure we keep them maintained? What are we doing? But then also with parks and recreation centers. When you talk about the 21 or 22 rec centers that we have in the city of Cleveland, we have to face reality. Most of those rec centers were up and running when we have close to 1 million people. 1 million people. So now we're talking about capital improvement projects, possibly affecting certain rec centers that possibly, if we had to make a tough decision, they probably don't have the right amount of enrollment for us to be able to operate. Or you may be talking about the repairs that are needed versus how many people are actually utilizing the services, where you may say we put in $5 million to do repairs to a certain area, and you look at the amount of people that are participating or using that. So looking at what the master plan for Parks and Recreation to see what they projected, where we should be at, can also determine what are we doing with the actual capital improvements, which is something important, and then also making sure we look at what we're doing to upgrade some of our fire and our EMS buildings. Some of those stations and locations are hideous. If you've been through one or seen some, you wouldn't want nobody from our building and housing department to actually do an evaluation or assessment on those facilities because they are, they need much needed improvements. So I think it's up to us as council to make an informed decision with this different new initiative. And like I mentioned, I definitely am looking to see if there's an opportunity for us not to just borrow against the whole entire 90 million. We may need to slow ball it and do around that 60 million and put 30 million into some other priorities or projects that we need in our neighborhoods, because our residents are not going to see the capital improvement projects as a top priority. They do see some of it, but some of the other things that we need in our neighborhood also needs to be taken care of. And then I'll wrap up with this last comment. One of the things that I noticed is when we go out and bid for streets and roads to get redone, do we have any study that show if people are overpricing us or charging us for our street resurface projects as opposed to the normal price if it wasn't so-called a government project? Through the chair.
Through the chairman of the council, and so a couple things on that point. If we stick with 12 million this year, Division of Streets would be able to do the work in-house with our own crews, which is going to reduce the cost of residential resurfacing for the city. If we increase that amount, then that means that MoCap, through our contractors, would take on a couple of the wards, which would be at a higher price than the cost of Division of Streets doing it themselves. And that relates to, overhead and profit of the businesses, which we can understand, but the Division of Streets doesn't operate that way, so they don't have to take into account overhead and profits. Now, as far as our bidding goes, we do receive typically multiple bids for our construction work, and we do go with the lowest and most responsive bidder. I would say that what we can do internally, what we're working on to help reduce the kind of the inflation, if you will, that they put on their costs, is really work on paying invoices quicker and more efficiently so that the contractors don't have to carry payroll and other expenses while the city is processing an invoice. And I've put that on me and my staff and Rick's staff to really overhaul that system this year, because until we really fix our invoicing processing time, then there's always going to be an inflator, if you will, that contractors put on us. Now, there's also other things that we do that are for the sake of public policy that are good things, like our OEO goals, that could also put an inflator on their cost. But the one thing that's within my control is processing invoices, and 2026 is the year that we're really focused on shortening that time.
Thank you, and I close on Chair, definitely, and I reiterate, Mr. Chairman, definitely looking for your leadership on this because, like I said, our residents, residents in the city, in our neighborhoods, they tired of waiting, and they want to see those improvements and those investments in the neighborhood as well as capital improvement projects. So I yield, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman Starr. Thank you for your perspective. I'm going to go to Councilwoman Nikki Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have said about there needs to be an urgency to invest in CPP, both its infrastructure and in our ability to generate our own clean power. I think, you know, with the rising cost of electricity, it's important that we do that, you know, sooner rather than later. And the need for infrastructure investment is long past. Moving on through the chair. Last week, during budget hearings, Commissioner Romero from the Division of Risk Management was at the table, and he discussed a plan that he had been advocating for since 2009 for the use of truck-mounted attenuator units, TMAs, or blocker trucks for safety forces to use on highway crash scenes. And I don't see anything in the heavy vehicles or lighter medium vehicles representing this, you know, this technology or the city using these vehicles. I do, however, see 2 pumper trucks and 2 aerial ladder trucks being purchased, totaling a little over $5.5 million. And you know, to put that type of an investment out, and these are the trucks that are typically used to block crash scenes on the highway. So through the chair, is there currently a plan being developed to use TMAs or blocker trucks, you know, this year?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we are working with Ed Romero on that, and so we're doing some investigating on that product. We're also looking at putting signage on those fire trucks that are in that legislation, or that will be in that legislation. We're also working to secure a grant to accomplish that as well. So it is something new that I'm working with the fire chief on, but they're not in that list, but they are under investigation.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, I know that our Commissioner Romero did mention that he had potentially identified grants or funding sources for this technology. I just want to keep, you know, raising this issue and keeping it at the forefront, because it's important that we keep our first responders safe, but also that we protect our investments. You know, $5.5 million is significant investment in apparatus, and you know, there is, you know, plenty of other cities and departments that use this type of technology, and I think it's time for the city to, you know, follow the director's advice, and that we see his plan through. Keeping on the subject of fire stations, through the chair, I see that in the long-term plan, I think it's listed in 2029, that there is improvements or perhaps a new fire station for Fire Station 23 or 24 to be built. Is there a plan in process for a new Fire Station 23 to be built?
Through the chairman and the councilwoman. So what we have is we're finalizing our fire and EMS modernization plan, and that kind of guides us as far as I think I mentioned to you which stations, and this is really for everyone's benefit, which stations can be improved through improvements to the current building, which ones need additions to the buildings, and which ones really can't be enhanced in the way the firemen need and need to be abandoned and a new station built. We are going through that process. Maybe Mark Dula can come up and speak to that particular fire station as far as why these 2 are listed and that one isn't. But one thing that we're trying to work towards is, you know, not programming a new fire station until we have land and we have a design completed for that fire station.
Thank you, Director. Through the chair to the councilwoman, thank you for the question, and thank you for your interest. The fire station modernization plan, as Director mentioned, has really three components. There's a repair component, the renew component, and the replace component, just to be clear. So what he mentioned about the fact that some stations just can't either be renovated or enhanced. So finding the land is one of the biggest challenges for that. Our strategy with the fire station modernization program, which will be funded similarly to the way we've done the police districts, is that all of the currently active fire stations will be repaired to a good standard, the essential standard. The completion of the modernization plan is dependent on the identification of sites. So that's the process we're in right now for the stations involved and that are mentioned in the CIP.
And, you know, through the chair, I know that Station 23 is in a pretty cramped location. It troubles me that it's just not on this, on this year or next year's plan.
Through the chairman and the councilwoman, I would say that when this was put together, we're really in the midst of analyzing our fire stations, and we don't want to put out false hope to anybody, including the firemen at any of our stations. So we really want to make sure that we both have concurrence on how we're going to move forward and concurrence from the finance department on how we're going to finance things. So right now we're being very cautious about what we're broadcasting to the public that we're going to focus on, because the worst thing that could happen is, folks get really excited about a project that's happening by us simply programming it without finishing our analysis. So we would just ask for a little bit of grace to allow us to finish and then work with council, work with fire to make announcements about how we think we can roll it out most efficiently.
Thank you. And with that in mind, I've mentioned before that there are, through the chair, there are indoor air quality issues at Station 23. And it is specifically related to inadequate separation between the apparatus floor and the living quarters. And I understand that Station 23 is not alone in that there is a less than ideal setup. However, what sets Station 23 apart, as I mentioned before, is the cramped space, and that there are 3 busy apparatus operating out of that station. What I would like to see, as we're waiting for a plan for a new station to be built, because I don't think it is possible to renovate Station 23. I think that you need a bigger site. Right now, when I visited, there was the ambulance was parked in front of the fire truck. So if there's a call, you kind of have to move trucks around, kind of like when I asked my teenage daughter to move her car. It's like my driveway at my house. It's not an ideal setup. So in the meantime, I would like to see at Fire Station 23 an industrial air purifier system immediately. There is a situation there that is unhealthy for our firefighters, and there needs to be, the firemen have purchased air purifiers themselves, but these are home type air purifiers that are not adequate for diesel fumes, which is what we're talking about. We're also talking about the off-gassing from their turnout gear. And so we need, some sort of ceiling-mounted unit in the apparatus bay, and then perhaps portable units in offices, sleeping quarters, and turnout gear rooms.
Mr. Chairman, the councilwoman, after our conversation last Monday night, I did talk to Mark Dulick about getting a team to the fire station to review your request, but that team would include someone from our on-call professional services team that really specializes in mechanical systems. And what we would do is we would analyze the current situation, try to figure out what the real concerns are based upon the air quality and what we can do to the system that's already in place, knowing that it might not make sense to replace the whole system, but to figure out what the best way to address real air quality issues are. So we're in the process of getting that team together, and then we would have a site visit to the firehouse and do some testing, and that's going to be our assessment that we would use to figure out what the repairs would be or what changes are needed to the air quality system.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. I appreciate that. And to Mr. DeLuca, I thank you for that. And then, so final question, away from fire stations, but still in the same part of, well, actually, I guess technically it's not my ward. Which, by the way, the Ridge Road Transfer Station, that is Ward 11. That's me. And then on, I did see on the long-term plan, the Cadell Clock Tower, Cadell Commons Park. Those are my ward, marked as a different ward. Although I'm happy to, collaborate with Councilman Shaw. I understand the ward boundary at Cadell Park is kind of odd. It's a vacated roadway, the old West Boulevard. My last item that I'd like to talk about through the chair is the Cadell Fine Arts Center. So I see on here that there is a, which I'm very well aware of, the park improvement plans for Cadell Commons Park 2027, Cadell Clock Tower 2028. However, I do not see the Cadell Fine Arts Center on here. And the Cadell Fine Arts Center, it's a very old building. It was the Cadell family home, built in the 1800s. It was moved from its original location to where it sits now. It has unfortunately been struck by vehicles multiple times because of the dangerous setup of the new West Boulevard. And it's also been broken into and vandalized in recent history. Can you tell me, when is the Cadell Fine Arts Center going to be on the list for capital improvements?
Through the chairman of the councilwoman, great question. If you go to your, actually it is in your 5-year capital plan, we typically with facilities, we start with the exterior and the roofs, and then we go to the inside. So we, make sure that the elements aren't penetrating the exterior. And so in 2028, there's money under rec roofs and envelope improvements, and that specifically relates to Cadell Fine Arts, and that's the roof, but also exterior, tuck pointing or anything, well, it's not brick, but anything that's needed to the exterior.
Would that, through the chair, would that include windows and doors, which has been an issue with the break-ins?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, yes.
Okay, thank you. And you said 2028?
Through the chairman of the councilwoman, 2028. And then as we move towards that, then we would do assessments for what would be needed for the inside of the building. There's 2 buildings, but we really have to think about the campus, but that's our first step.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Next, I'm going to go to Councilwoman Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, appreciate your team has done an excellent service to the new Ward 4, which is now the new Ward 3. All the projects that have been done in that ward have been exceptional. The residents love you because you have been there at the community meetings. You have actually explained the detail of all the work that have been done with the rec centers, with the resurfacings that you have given that particular ward over the last 4 years, and we have no complaints. So I want to thank you for improving the ward as you've done in 4 years. In 4 years alone. And also, I want to thank Mr. James Wright for being so attentive to me and the residents all the time. So we want to thank you for that, especially the beautiful dog park that is going to be hopefully coming soon for a ribbon opening this spring, as well as the pavilion at Lou Easton Park. I mean, those are the two entertainment centers of the infrastructure that's coming to our ward, so the families can have something to do when they come to the park instead of trying to bring their own equipment to be entertained. So I know we are looking to build Lou Easton Park as a family-friendly park with the new skateboard rink that's coming to the park as well in 2027, I believe. So to say the least, you're doing a great job overall, you know, of what we had requested in the last 4 years, and everything is coming to fruition. And thank you also of going to resurface the parking lot. Thank you. That's been a milestone.
A big job.
That's a huge job. So saying that, Chair, to the director, are you going to also do the parking lot across the street as well, or just the parking lot at Lou Eastern, at the Zamba George parking lot? Director, Chair to the director.
So through the chairman and the councilwoman, this plan is only the very large parking lot adjacent to the rec center.
Okay.
And it's that alone is around $1 million. So it is a heck of a big parking lot. We know that it's heavily used. But yes, so other parking lots need to be addressed separately. This is just for that main parking lot.
Okay, thank you so much for that. But I do have a couple other questions. I want to just continue the fire station question, so I could just move past that. Fire Station 36 that's on 131st and 131st. What is specifically is envelope improvements? Chair to the director.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, Fire Station 36 is a relatively recent building. The challenge there is one half of the roof, the actual structural panels of the roof have deteriorated.
Already?
So we are ripping, yes, unfortunately. So we are going to be replacing one half of the structural system under the roof.
Wow. Wow, that's something else. Oh, wow. Okay, all right. At least you stand on top of that instead of it being destroyed, as the other comments from the other colleagues talking about their fire station. And secondly, a chair to the director, the old fire station on 131st. What are the plans for that one?
Mr. Chairman and the councilwoman, so we don't have any plans for that fire station. It is surplus property at this point. Public safety is open to transferring to a third party. Quite honestly, whenever we walk people through the building, there's most people just walk away from it. So we don't really have a plan for it yet. And if folks know interested parties, definitely let myself and Commissioner DeGennaro know, and we would walk them through it. No plans right now, though.
Well, thank you for that, because myself and CDC Newport, we walked through it, chair to the director, we walked through it about 2 or 3 years ago, and we have interest in hopefully that we can sit down with the city to donate it to the community, because the community want that fire station to be open as a training center for culinary, for culinary school for youths, to come in and learn how to cook and also have offices upstairs. So that is the initial plan that we have suggested 3 years ago. We had an architect as well as a contractor walk through the building with us, and they said it was sound enough to renovate that building, such as into an open restaurant for the, community. So that idea is still on the table, and I'm glad that you opened that up. So now I know I could come upstairs and have a conversation to see how the city can donate that, and then we can get the particulars written down to see how we can save that fire station and turn it into a retail event for the community, per se, and also a training center for the youth. So that's our plan. So I hope our chair also, he borders that. Matter of fact, it's half of his area as well as half of, I think it's still half of Ward 3. If not, it's Ward 2 now. But that's something, Chair, that we have been discussing with Newport at least 3 years. It's Ward 2? Okay, so the chair has to be in that meeting too as well. But I'd like to continue to partner up with you with that. Hopefully that we can get some sound for that building. Okay, thank you for that. And then moving on to my next question, as Councilman Casey brought up, the red brick streets. I know this is for, I know I had talked with the engineering manager, Rick, through a year or so ago when Rick had stated that some funding had came in to resurface the red brick streets. And you had called the council for us to just to give you a couple of streets just to put on the list when you brought it to the table. And then you said after the fact that we can add more red brick streets onto the list after everything has I guess, been approved and passed. So is this still the case, Manager?
Let me jump in for 1 second. So we can always address brick streets through our requirements contract at any time.
Requirement contracts, okay.
But the bid that we put out, where we were soliciting council members for a list of streets,
Yes.
those streets are listed in the ordinance, and then they were specifically listed in the bid. So we can't add brick streets to that bid, which we have in hand, but we can always add brick streets through the requirements contract, or if there's interest from council, we can put out another bid next year for more brick streets.
Okay.
According to the, what was your old ward number?
4.
Okay, so, yeah, so you had you had 2 streets that were listed in the bid, in the ordinance, that we have prices for.
Right. Okay. All right. So it wasn't the understanding, because during that time when we were asked to bid a couple streets, we was like on a short string for you guys to put it through the ordinance. But after the fact, from my understanding that, we were able to add more because we didn't have the list of where all the streets, were. And then also that was during redistricting. And by me being being observant in the new ward that I was in and campaigning, a lot of residents that was in the ward that I was going to end up attaining, they had questions. They had the question about their red brick streets. So under my assumption, I thought that I was able to put those red brick streets on the list because it was a press rush for us to get some red brick streets in the ordinance per se. So now you're saying that we have to wait another year, another year to put those extra red streets in required contracts, whereas as well as I see some of these red brick streets need to be done now per se, and the ones that we put in the ordinance are going to be done this year.
So through the chairman
to the director.
Through the chairman and the councilwoman, so there's 2 different ways that you can fund a roadway project. And the one that we used last year was by listing a specific list of streets and putting them out to bid. So that one, the list of streets was already finalized. The bids came in. There's no way to change what they put a bid in for.
Okay.
But at any time this year, we can give you a cost estimate for a brick street in your ward through an existing requirements contract.
Okay.
So that's like the other way to do it, and we can do that anytime. So you could just let Rick know, hey, now my ward includes these streets, or my old ward include these streets, and now it's still my ward. These are the ones I want costs on.
Okay.
And then they don't have to wait a whole year. We can do them in a requirements contract this year if you have ward, discretionary money to put towards them, or if you want to use them for residential resurfacing. Just to put it out there for all council members, if you want to pick a concrete street or a brick street in residential resurfacing, it's going to be more expensive, and it would be work that we as MOCAP would have to do, not Division of Streets. But you're more than welcome to pick any residential street that's a D or an F. It's just that Division of Streets doesn't have the staff to do brick streets.
Right.
Generally, they don't have the capacity to do concrete streets. So that would just defer over to Rick and his team to program it through a contract. So keep that in mind as you're looking at your brick streets, concrete streets, and asphalt streets.
Okay, all right. Okay, and thank you for that. I will just stick with Rick instead of using my discretionary funds, because I don't want to pay for something that you guys already have the grant or the required contract to do for the red brick streets, if I have the same understanding that you just spoke on.
So through the chairman of the councilwoman, none of the streets that were proposed by the council members last year received funding besides the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 streets that are listed in the Brick Street program for the capital improvement plan. All the rest, if council members want to move forward with them, it would be their capital dollars, their discretionary funds. And that's we don't have any funding source or grants associated with brick streets. So we picked out a few for the reason I mentioned, but the rest of these are all at the council person's discretion.
Okay, all right, thank you. And one last question. When you come to bridge and roads, it's a question that always been coming up for the longest. The bridge on East 93rd, from 93rd and Kinsma that cross over to 79th. That's between 3 and 5. So many residents. I don't know if this a ODOT chair to the director and or MOCAP. The bridge underneath has been cracking for years. I never looked underneath the bridge, but a lot of the residents see the crackling underneath the bridge, because that bridge was resurfaced how many years ago? You resurfaces, and you did not too long, but a lot of residents keep bringing the question up, the cracking and the breaking of the bridge underneath the bridge, the concrete underneath the bridge. Who takes care of that, ODOC or MOCAP? Chair to the director.
To the chair, to the councilwoman, city bridges are a responsibility of the city.
Okay.
So we would be looking at that, and any type of repairs would be through the city to get that done. I will check to see what we have in terms of our analysis on that bridge, and I can get that results back to you with what we plan on doing with that.
Okay, all right, that's my last question. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Gray. Just want to remind, we got a meeting at 12 o'clock for the chairman's meeting. I'm going to go to Councilman Shaw, close us out.
All right, thank you, Chair. I'll make it as quick as I can. I'm aware of the meeting. Let me just, through the chair to the director, a couple questions. Can you tell me, I see the sidewalk repair program, the 50-50 match program, has been allocated $1 million. That's for the whole citywide, is that correct? Through the director to the chair?
Through the chairman and the councilman, so those are funds for a one-year period, and they are allocated typically each year in the capital improvement plan. And I would say too that for the non-compliant sidewalk program, Oh, are you speaking of the CWD 50/50? Okay. So the CWD 50/50 program relates to when Cleveland Water is putting a water line in the roadway, and by code, they're only required to go center line to the curb.
I see.
And so we look at it as an opportunity to get the whole street resurfaced. So we, as capital projects, we give them the funding to resurface curb to curb. And then we have a complete street for the community instead of one side being old and one side new. So the CWD 50/50 program, $1 million, that's based upon the estimate of the work that they're going to do this year. The program that I believe you're thinking of is a few lines down, and it's called Non-Compliant Sidewalk Repair Program. It's on Roads and Bridges on the first page. I believe it's on the first, yeah. And it's just a couple lines down from where you saw the CWD 50/50. That dollar amount is $750,000, and that's our estimate of what we would need to meet the demands of the program in this year. And then in addition, when the residents put in their 50%, then that money goes into that account as well. So so what happens is a resident flags for us, hey, I'm interested in the 50/50 program. We send out an inspector to do an assessment and then give them a cost estimate of what it would cost for us to do the job and what their half would be. If they choose to move forward, they give us a check for their 50%. That amount goes into this bank account for use, and then we program the work to be done this year. And currently, in case any council members are wondering, we're in the process of putting out new estimates to all of the residents who said they were interested towards the end of last year, because at a certain point it's too late for construction. And so we have about 36 more estimates to put out to the residents, but we've already started receiving people saying, yes, I'd like to participate, receiving checks in the mail so that we can schedule that work for the springtime.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I was misunderstanding the other line item, so I appreciate that. And if I can get some more information on that by email, that would be great.
Yes.
I know I want to facilitate. My understanding is the cost can be shared between neighbors as well, right? When the whole
Yes.
block pitches in. So I'm interested in getting some of the folks in my community to do that as well.
And Councilman, just on that point, so that council members remember, we did take an ordinance through in the summertime that allows third parties, like a resident or a church or a third party, to pay the residents 50% if they just don't have the money for it.
That's great. Thank you for that. And then through the chair to the director, I wanted to just briefly talk about the Cleveland Zero and the Cleveland Moves. I know Councilman Plensick isn't here anymore, but I know there was some concern about the funding for that. And from my understanding, our citywide debts already this year for traffic fatalities is 5, which is, surpasses or matches the fatalities from homicides that our public safety division sees. So I would urge, the rest of the table to think about how we are prioritizing the money for mobility and increasing safety. And I am hoping to see an increase in that money and trying to get through that. If, through the chair to the director, I wanted to understand, if we asked you to allocate some more money towards that program, where would you suggest pulling some of that from, or where would you suggest finding that money for?
Through the chairman and the councilman, so I would suggest that this would not be the year to increase funding for that program, just because we currently have some money in our accounts for it that we're programming, and then we have this additional money that we're proposing to put into the program. And we've just sort of reallocated where staff is located, and we're kind of building that capacity. So to be 100% honest, I'm not sure that we have more capacity besides what we already have in our account and in this $1.5 million. But I will say that going forward, that's something that we would love to work with you on. as well as to point out that in the 5-year plan, you're going to see a line item that starts next year for Vision Zero specific to reduction of and elimination of crashes. So in going forward, and again, there's some money in our accounts for that program currently, but going forward, you're going to see a split between Cleveland Moves, more mobility focused, and Vision Zero, more elimination of crash focused.
Okay.
But I would love to work with you on how you think we can best optimize the use of funds and what your priorities are.
Thank you. Yeah, look forward to that. Question for the Director of Finance through the Chair. I just wanted to understand briefly on how this new financing mechanism would impact our credit rating, or do you believe it would not change it? I wanted to just understand, because my understanding, the context is, for the last few years, we've actually seen our credit increase rise, and we've been doing it, going out for more bonds. Is that correct?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, really can only help. I had meetings with each of the major rating agencies later last year in the fall, and kind of set the stage for what we're doing. And I will say, so I want to emphasize, like, this is something that a lot of municipalities do across the country. We're not some experiment. Where I came from in Jacksonville, we always reimbursed ourselves. So it can only help. Like I mentioned during budget hearings, I mean, we kept a $68 million liability off our books this year by not borrowing the full amount of our CIP. So that helps because they look at that. And then it's all that interest cost that we're not paying right now is money that we can put towards other things. And that's my motivation, is like just from the discussion today. I mean, rec centers, fire stations, CPP, there's a lot of needs across the city, and we need to be smart about how we're spending, you know, our funds and what we're going out and borrowing. So it saves costs, it keeps liability off our books, and then we're only spending when we need. So that only helps with our credit rating.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I yield. I have a few more questions, but I know we're pressed for time, so I yield.
All right, thank you, Councilman Shaw. Well, thank you, Director, for the presentation. We're going to have more questions to you coming up down the road for sure. So anyway, that concludes the meeting of the Municipal Services and Properties. I'm going to adjourn the meeting to the next call of the chair.
Thanks.